I'm hoping this is recording okay and that you can hear me. It's not showing my talking on my volume bar, so we're going to hope it works. We're going to go ahead and get started at 7 as usual, so I will see you then. Hi, and welcome to StashBlaster Quilts. My name is Maria, and I am here to help you make more quilts in less time with less stress. Unfortunately, my phone has been making weird noises, so I had to reboot it, and I couldn't put it on Do Not Disturb, so that's what I'm doing right now. Okay, so now it's not going to ring or text or do anything weird while we're talking. So, if this is your first time here, welcome. I am normally a professional organizer, but I also do like to sew, and quilt in particular. And so we always start these sessions with a kind of a tip for being more organized. They're usually quilting related, sometimes not. But today we're going to be talking about curtain rods, like this one, or tension rods as well. There's a lot of things you can do with these that will make your life a lot easier. So not only can you hang a small quilt on something like this, and all it takes is a couple of nails or a couple of hooks, but I've talked to you before about making quilt binding and putting it on a toilet paper roll to keep it neat. So let me, oops, sorry, bears ahoy. I'm going to tell you about the bears in just a minute. Well, a couple minutes anyway. So I wrap my binding around either toilet paper or paper towel tubes like this. And so if you have let's say a cabinet or a bookshelf, you can use tension rods and put the paper tubes on it and then just tension it into place. Now, in my particular case, I use cafe rods, and I'm going to show you my area over, it's across the room over there. There you go. That's the back of my door that you can see with those little blue strips hanging down. I unwound them so that it'd be easier to see. So what I did is I used white plastic link chain, and then I'm using cafe rods to just go between links. And so if I have really fat rolls, they fit, the thinner ones fit as well. And then all the way on the far left there, that wavy looking thing, that's just a curtain. I use the curtain over top just to make sure that all of the strips stay clean. So that's a really handy thing to do so that they're all visible, they're all on the rolls, easy to pop in underneath your sewing machine, and it just keeps everything nice and neat and clean. Now on a shelf, you could put them several deep, you just wouldn't be able to see them all. You can use tension rods in cabinets or on bookshelves for other things as well. So let's say you have a really tall, not adjustable shelf section. You could hang things like starch bottles and things on a tension rod at the top, leaving you room for bins underneath for other cleaning supplies and things like that. So today's tip is either cafe rods or tension rods to help you stay more organized. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to update you on the projects that we've been working on. So our 2022 quilt is the Twisted 4 patch, and we're almost done. But let me show you here. Since I'm going to be putting a striped binding on, I didn't want to just put the binding right next to the Twisted 4 patch, because I was thinking it would look odd and be a little bit, it would look like it was waving when it wasn't. But there's a problem. On our top edge, since I decided to add a 2-inch border, I didn't have enough backing material. This is the original backing. What I did is I took strips of fabric and I just sewed them all together. So here at the top, I didn't have room. So what I did was I put my sashing strip on the front and I matched it up with another strip the same size in the back. So I'll be able to go ahead and pull this up in the back and on the front. I know it's kind of hard to tell the difference. Okay? And I'll be able to go ahead and finish off this quilt and have the edge done. Now, I don't really want to quilt this particular border. I just would prefer to leave it plain. So what I'm going to do is just take black thread on a regular old needle and I'm just going to baste the edge. And then what I'm going to do is put the striped binding on with a flange, I think. And I'm thinking maybe red, but I'm not sure. I haven't decided. I want it to be a bright color. And so here on the front, here, let me get this twisted around back this way. So here on the front, it'll have the sashing. Then it would have a very thin line of my bright color, and then my stripes going on a 45-degree angle. So the black should give me enough separation that those colors will still pop, because bright colors pop against black, but it won't get confused with the lines that are coming down off of the 4 patches, because for example here and here, these lines are different angles, and it might look like they were askew and not lined up the way that they really will be. So that's how I fixed the problem with the back being too small. Okay, I just added it to both the front and the back, stitched it once, and then it'll fold up and it'll finish nicely. So I will have to trim, hold on, here on the back, this other end of my backing I had tons of. So I will trim this down to match this piece of fabric I have here, just to keep it all nice and neat. Okay, so other than that, the top is all quilted. I just have to put the outer border on. Like I said, I'm going to baste it down. Then I will put the binding on, and it'll get sewn onto the back and then brought around to the front so that the flange is in place. I don't know if I'm going to machine or hand sew it down. I haven't decided. It'll depend. I would normally machine it down, but I don't normally have the thickness that I'm going to have from the striped border, since I made the stripe myself. It wasn't just striped fabric that I cut and turned into binding. So it's actually going to be double thick, and then you count the fold, it's going to be 4 times as thick as normal. So that's why I'm thinking about maybe not. Okay. Oh, and then you add the flange piece in there, that's going to add another layer. So it's 5 layers of fabric plus everything else is a little bit thick to try to stitch in the ditch over, but that's why I'm not sure. I'm probably going to give it a shot, because this is not a quilt that I'm going to be keeping. And so since I'll be donating it, if it's not 100% perfect, it'll be fine. But it will also give me a chance to try it out and see what I think. I have a feeling I'm going to wind up doing it by hand. But I do most of my bindings by hand anyway. I'm just comfortable doing it, and it's a nice handwork project to have. I do have the hexagon quilt, which is plenty of handwork, but it's a different animal. So maybe just having a nice long piece of binding to mindlessly stitch down will be helpful. Okay, so speaking of the hexi quilt, let me move my one camera, the one that looks down at my desk and was currently looking at my other side of the room for the sashing. I'm going to bump this up, and now you should be able to see it. No, I think you can see pretty much all of it. The far corner, you can see the top of the beach, and so these have all been put together from the 3 patches to the 6 patches. It's a 2x3 set. I'm done with all of those. And so what I've done now is I've gone ahead, let me pull this, let's say this one. Okay. And I'm using tape just to hold these together. All right. It might be easier to see on the overhead camera. So give me just a second. I want to move it before I make you sick. So I want to get this in place and point it down first. Okay. There we go. All right. So from here up has been sewn. So the last seams I did were these ones here, making this a 2x3. So now I'm going to join these together in rows. So this would be row 1, this would be row 2, the one underneath it. So now I'm going to sew these together. And then that'll give me the largest patch that I'll be able to carry around. I have this box, which is bigger than the one I've been using for the smaller set. And these will just fit in there nicely without being twisted or anything else. And it gives me room for my scissors and my threads and all of that stuff in the outer edges. However, since so few of them are going to fit in the box, what I'm going to wind up doing is I'm going to put as many in this box as I can fit. And the lid is pretty deep, so I'll be able to get a good, let's say, 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches if I squeeze, worth of those patches in here. But since this will be my carry around set, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the pieces at the top, everything that fits, into this box. And then that's what I'll carry. So those will be the last pieces sewn, most likely, because I've been working from home a lot more. So at home, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this design wall that I used to use all the time, which is a teeny tiny one compared to my nice big fat ones now. And I'm going to take these sets and put them on this design board and start sewing them together. And I'm going to wind up doing this more in rows. It'll probably be in half rows first. So I'll probably do either 2 or 4 rows up from the bottom. And then, and half the way across, and then I'll sew those 2 sections together, and then I'll have the full row, and then I'll do the next set up, and then the next set up. So at the end of today, well, probably not until tomorrow, I'm going to take this wall down again. So the next time we're back on, they'll all be gone again, except for whatever I've managed to accomplish down here at the bottom. And so you're going to get to watch the quilt grow again, but you're going to watch it in rows. So you'll be able to see a bigger change each time as it comes out. Because when you sew the first triad together, okay, that's 3 seams, but it holds 6 sides together. So, because it's 2 on each, right? So I'm basically a third done with each with the entire quilt sewing when I'm done with the triad. And then I'm going to sew 3 for each set. That's going to be about 1/6. So the chunks are going to get bigger, so it's going to be more noticeable every time I stitch. I will have more seams per section, but when they go together, they're not going to be this big, they're going to be this big. So it'll be a little bit more visible as they pop up, how it's going. Another thing to keep in mind is I'm trying to sew 15 seams a day. And so that has been 5 of those little triads, or 5 of the 2x3s. But now each of this set has 5 seams. So 3 of these a day will be my new goal. Obviously, if it's the weekend or I have time, I'm going to sew more. And so I did that a lot over here. I had some mental health days where I was just incapable of doing much that required thought on a couple of weekends, these last couple weekends. And so I stitched a lot of these then. So I got way ahead, which is very nice. But my goal is going to be 3 a day. There are 10 across. So that means since I'm only here every couple of weeks, you're going to see a bunch of things happening as they happen. So the bottom is kind of wonky. We've talked about that in the past in terms of how I sewed it originally, because I just needed to sew something, and so that's what I did. And I did it by color, not by positioning and things. So there's some oddnesses going on at the bottom. But from about here up, let me put it so you can see it. It doesn't help if I show something. From about here up, about above that orange fish, these are all done the way I told you how to do them. So if you're following along, that's the way that you would assemble them. It'll be a lot easier than what I'm going to be stuck doing down with the stuff at the bottom. But overall, I'm very, very happy that I got done as much as I have. And so we're just going to keep going from there. All right, now I forgot to turn my light on again. I am the worst at remembering these lights. Okay, so the twisted 4-patch I've talked about. Oh, and I forgot to mention, when I put the binding on the top of the quilt, I'm also going to incorporate the sleeve. Now the nice thing is the sleeve is going to hide that black strip that I'm adding on the back to get more room, so nobody will ever know that it's there. So that's a nice little added bonus. Okay, so this quilt that we've been talking about, this underwater quilt here, I've been calling it underwater the whole time. Let me move this camera down. I'd like a better name for this. I tried under the sea, but a friend of mine said, yes, but you're not Ariel and you're not singing, you know, and marrying the prince. So probably under the sea wouldn't be the best option. But I was thinking maybe Underwater Friends. I was thinking about, you know, A Day in the Bahamas. If you have any suggestions for names for me, please either put them in the comment or shoot me an email and go ahead and share that information with me. I would really appreciate it. And it'll really help this have a good new name. If you want to email me, that's the email address. mail@StashBlasterQuilts.com. Here we go. And you're also welcome to submit any questions that you have. If you get stuck on something or you want to learn more about something, please feel free to go ahead and email me at this address and I will get back to you. Currently, I am responding to every email. If I wind up with 10,000 followers and they're all sending me emails, then I may wind up a little bit behind. But as of right now, I'm keeping up just fine, so please feel free to email. Okay, then I want to start talking. I know it's only the beginning of December, but I want to start talking about the 2023 quilt. Now, since I want to make sure that you're interested in what I'm making, and a lot of times people want to know the way my brain works in terms of designing and fabric measurement and calculations and all that kind of thing. The idea behind the quilt is that I'm going to let you guys vote. I'm going to give you several options, and then you tell me what you would like to see me sew. And I will design it, do all of the fabric figuring out, I probably won't do the cutting here, but I will explain the cutting to you depending on what it is. And then you're going to watch me sew it, you'll watch it on the design wall, etc. So that you can watch the entire process. So I'm going to give you 5 options and they're all listed right here. Now, once I have a vote on what you want, then I will go ahead and have some more questions for you. Okay? But the first one is traditional. Would you like to just do a basic, simple, traditional quilt? And we can talk about how complex it is later. But you want traditional or do you want modern? We can do something more modern. We could do something traditional with a modern twist. So maybe we would use improv blocks in a traditional manner so that we get kind of a mix of the two. The fourth one is a mystery quilt. Now, obviously, if it's a mystery quilt, you won't get to watch the design process. And we would not start actually cutting and sewing pieces out until probably March, because I will need to design it, test it, sew it, and do all of those kinds of things to make sure it's all going to work out prior to getting you started on it. So if you'd like a mystery quilt, we can do that. And we could do a simple block of the month. So let me know what you would like to do this year. You can either type in by name what it is, or just tell me I want to do number 5. We can certainly do that. So this is your first opportunity to vote. You will get another opportunity in 2 weeks, which will be the third Wednesday of the month. And after that, I'm going to go by anything that's in the chat plus any emails that I've gotten. And that's what we're going to do. And then I'll have a different list of questions at the beginning of January. And you'll go ahead, you'll make those decisions. And then we're going to start with the design process. So I hope that this makes sense. I hope you like this. If you don't like this idea or you love this idea, you can also let me know about that too. Okay? Because I want to make sure that you're enjoying what we're doing here. Okay, a couple of other updates. Last time I showed you how I was sewing the teddy bears for the fire department. Oh, let me move this camera out of the way. And so I had this pretty pink fabric and the brown fabric. And so my son's girlfriend came to stay and to meet us for the first time over the Thanksgiving break. And so I was sewing these then. I already had them assembled, stuffed, and the opening closed. What I was sewing was the faces. Now, I didn't want to put buttons for eyes because I didn't want to have there be any chance of the button coming off and being a choking hazard. So I decided I wanted to embroider the eyes. And I have tons of floss and threads and things like that in my kit. So I said, that's how I'm going to do it. And so I started with this guy. This is the brown one. And the one problem that I had with him was that my color selection was not as good as it could be. So let me bring this up here, you can see him. Those are blue eyes, but the brown sucked a lot of the color out, and the red lips are hard to see too. So this was a choice that I made, thinking when I held the thread up to the bear it was going to be fine, but once I started stitching it, they kind of disappeared. Plus, because this is a fleecy material, the threads sunk in, and so they became really, really hard to see. So I probably went over these eyes, nose, and lips at least a half a dozen times with at least double, if not quadruple thread. Okay? So if you're going to sew something like this, you might want to either, if your machine can do it, go ahead and sew the face on first prior to assembly, or just be prepared with 4 layers of thread or embroidery floss or whatever you want to use, and just be prepared to do a whole bunch of layers. It was even worse on the pink ones. This fluffy stuff is so fluffy that it just disappeared. This is probably quadruple thread at least 8 times that I went over in order to make the faces visible. So I do have them in a couple of different sizes, but these are the ones that I showed you that I was going to be making. Now, the fun thing about this was yesterday at our meeting, Judy, who is the one that was in charge of this project, had some of them with like bandanas on them. Other people, rather than embroidering the face on, they either embroidered or drew faces on white muslin and then just cut out a shape, basically the shape of the face. So it went around the eye and then bumped up for the forehead and then came down and around. That of course does make it more visible, and it's not going to require the going over multiple times, but then you have to sew the muslin down to the fabric, so I would definitely do that in advance. Let me think, what else? There were all kinds of decorations, which is interesting. One gal brought in this neon pink bunny rabbit that she had made and stuffed, and that was adorable too. So that was perfectly fine. One thing to keep in mind is if you're going to stuff with your fabric scraps, so this is a great way to use all those little chips and shavings that you have, make sure you cut the pieces small. Otherwise, you can wind up with big flat sections or really dense parts that don't fluff out nicely. And I have found that I like to mix my shredded batting and scraps together. The shredded batting helps keep it a little bit lighter and more huggable, and the scraps give it a little bit more weight and comfort in that part of it. So that's just one of those things that I think you might want to consider when you're stuffing something like this. So The fire department sent a couple of representatives yesterday, and they picked up all the bears that Judy had. So I told her I was going to talk about these tonight. So she's going to get hers next week or the week after. So, probably next week. So, okay, so Judy has just written here in the notes, think of all the underwater worlds from the Gungan world, home of Jar Jar Binks, to Avatar, or Aquaman, or Wakanda, Seatopia. Yeah, that's cool. So, yeah, so that's a great way to go with that. But I would still need a name. So would this be Travel to Seatopia? Or, I don't know if Avatar has a different name for the underwater portion, because I haven't seen it yet, obviously. So maybe I'll rope that name in on it. So thank you, Judy. Okay, so anyway, so that's the Bears update. I am currently... So for those of you who come and listen during the or listen to the first 15 minutes, I have been told that people like to listen just to hear what I'm doing and then try to figure it out. So one of the things that I was doing was I was starting to sew the charm squares that I'm doing for a charm challenge. No, sorry, the charm triangles that I'm doing for a charm challenge. And I was pressing those as well, and my iron makes all kinds of weird sound. Seatopia is the underwater world being threatened by nuclear testing in the movie Godzilla vs. Megalodon. I have not seen that movie. I was thinking of Seatopia from, what is that movie? It's a animated movie. There's the bunny rabbit sheriff and the sly fox. I think it's Zootopia. And they do have a water section, so I assumed it was from that. So, nope, didn't know about that. So, okay, well, let's keep that in mind. I hope that this isn't as scary as Godzilla and Megalodon. But, anyway, I think that is it for the updates right now. I am working on a double pinwheel, which is basically a disappearing 4 patch, but it was done with a pinwheel block. So the middle, instead of being squares, is a little pinwheel itself, and then there's bars and then pinwheels. You'll see it. So I'm working on that as well, and I am starting to take a little bit of time to work on some of the billions of UFOs that I have. If you are new to quilting, or projects similar to quilting, there are things called UFOs, which are unfinished objects. Some people also call them WIPs, works in progress. I was just talking the other day to one of my friends, and we were talking. And I just lost my train of thought. I have skipped the station, and I am nowhere near my destination. What was I talking about? Oh, I was talking about Centerville Quilters Unlimited started the UFO challenge. It wound up spreading to a whole bunch of different chapters. But we would pay $1 for each thing that we entered, and then that gave us a ticket. If you completed it, you got a ticket to win the money. So you would win half the money for first place and a quarter of the money for second and third. And so the first year, I put in over 100, and I didn't win a thing. But I completed. It was like 120, and I completed all the ones that I listed. And then the second year, I put in like 50-something of them, and that year I won. I think it was like $125, so I felt pretty good. I still hadn't gotten all my money back, but I did get some of it, so that was nice. And then the third year, I put in like 50 and didn't win anything. But it was fun because every time we had a show and tell, you would see people going ahead and putting in their suggestions. I mean, not their suggestions, showing their finishes. Now, some people, when they found out we were going to be doing that, they and we found out about this later, and they're like, hey, you know what? Over the summer, I was working on these projects, and I would leave the last foot of binding to go, to put on. And so that would be their finish, would be just finishing whipping down the last foot of binding. I didn't do that. I was just, no, I'm going to do it from scratch. And so, amazingly enough, after over 200 UFOs, I still have a bunch. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I have talked about, I don't know why I'm umming so much tonight, I apologize for that. I have talked about how my guilds have free tables. And sometimes what I will do is if somebody puts a partially finished project on the free table, I will take those pieces home and then I will use them. I will either just finish the project or I will use its parts to do something else. So there's been a bunch of times where there's been a stack of half square triangles. Well, I use half square triangles all the time. So I would bring them home, wash them, press them, and then they go right into the bin, and then when I'm ready, they're there. There's been projects like, there was someone who did something with these really bright fabrics, and they made the 12-inch squares, but never just assembled them. So I'll just go ahead and assemble them, and that'll be done. Quilted, bound. So there's more than just the one step, but they've already done most of the work. So that's the kind of thing where I wind up with UFOs of items I haven't actually started, because anything that doesn't get taken from the free table winds up in the trash can. And those of you who have watched me for any period of time know I hate throwing out fabric. It's not a cheap resource. It's not great for the environment to produce or when it returns. So I really like to reuse fabric as much as possible. I reclaim fabric, but I also use those tiny pieces. People ask me all the time, why do you do things with such small pieces? Because I'd rather make a quilt out of it than I would throw it away and have it in the landfill. Because there's all kinds of chemicals in there and things. It's not good. Let's go ahead and use them up. There was a 40s saying, use it up, wear it out, fix it up, and then there was something like, then throw it out, or something like that. It's basically the old reduce, reuse, recycle concept. But I like to use things up. I like to recycle fabric. I like to take old clothes even and cut them apart and do different things with them. So whatever it is that will make you happy, do it. And I'm not against buying new fabric. I'm just against wasting it. So when I buy fabric, do I buy excess because I know I can't get that again by the time I'll need it? Yes. But then I make sure that fabric doesn't get thrown out. It gets processed into my drawers and then it gets used. I hope that makes sense. Okay, Judy, I vote for whichever project you prefer, but I love a good mystery. Okay, fair enough. So that's one vote for a mystery currently here. I don't know if anybody has emailed anything or if they will by the time the decision has to be made. But, okay, so I've been watching a lot of costumers, and I've told you about that, like Bernadette Banner, Morgan Donner. I've been watching Rachel Maskey a lot lately. She won the 2018 Face Awards as a makeup artist. All kinds of really cool stuff. And she does costuming, but she also does fashion makeup if you want to watch that, and vintage fashion and all kinds of fun stuff. And so that's what I keep on my YouTube when I'm, puttering around if I'm not listening to a book on tape. And fast fashion is one of those things that they're all against, and I have been for a long time. And I wasn't exactly sure why I was bothered by it as much as I was, until when I was listening to them and they were explaining what's involved in fast fashion and why they also will repurpose. So they're making everyday clothes out of things like curtains and tablecloths and sheets and things like that. And then they're going to like thrift stores to get that stuff. They're not, just buying it. And it's a great way to do things like that. So I've been known to go to the thrift store and buy cotton shirts and skirts and things like that, and then chop them up and put them into quilts. Now, for those of you who have seen my collection, you probably are asking yourself, why would Maria ever go looking for fabric? Because I have a ton. I do. And yes, you're right. I do need to use it up more. I have had the last few years, and I was thinking about it, it used to be every year and a half or so I would turn over, all of the fabric that's in my stash. But the last few years with COVID and everything else, things have gotten a little weird around here, and I've done less sewing. So I'm not turning it over as fast as I used to. So I need to make a concerted effort to go ahead and hopefully in the new year I will have enough time that I can make some serious inroads into my stash. I had sent off a whole bunch of quilts to Florida for the hurricane relief. So I no longer have a giant stack of them in my guest room, which is nice because I'm hoping that my stepmom will come and visit and she'll need the room. And so I really do need to restock that. And I do that with the StashBlaster 1 quilts. We are having issues with the website again. I am so sorry. Apparently, I thought it was up and live. It has not been up and live. So, it's in a static position right now. So you can look, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we are going to be working on that with the goal of getting it so that you can get the StashBlaster patterns. I am still working on writing 2, 3, and 4. They're made, but I still have to write all the directions and things. StashBlaster 1 is, of course, ready. The StashBlaster Quilts, those patterns you'll be able to download for free. You can also purchase them if you want them on paper. And then my other quilting designs, I will have downloadable versions and paper versions available. So those will also be up there. My classes list will be up there that I offer to guilds and things. And something I'm thinking about doing is doing maybe once a month, do an online class. So, open to the general public. You would just register for it and, pay a fee, and you'd be able to attend even if you weren't part of a guild. So I'm thinking about doing that and seeing how that goes. I don't know about on-demand classes yet, because I'm not really sure how to set those up properly so that they're as accessible as they should be. I'm also in the middle of finishing the reorganization of my sewing room. So that's still in the works. So it's going to be a busy December for me. I'm finding myself, things are taking a little bit longer than I anticipated, but they are coming along. It doesn't help, though, when you have an entire drawer full of beads that you're starting to put back, because the plastic drawers, I've shown you those before. I had a drawer full. I was putting it back in the holder when I sneezed, and then I bunked my knee, and beads went everywhere. They went out into the hallway. They went underneath the, and around the design wall. I spent 2 days on the floor just picking up beads. And I know I didn't get them all, but I got enough of them, and I got all the bigger ones. I'm sure some of the teeny weeny ones are still in the carpet. So it's been that kind of a reorganization for me, because I used to have the beads and things kind of in a beads and jewelry section in along with some other embellishments. And so I've been breaking those things out because I have some design plans and I didn't want to have to go through, 5 giant drawers of embellishments if I'm just looking for beads. So I had just sorted all of that out and I cried. I actually sat on the floor and it was lumpy because there were beads on the floor. And I just lost it. I teared up the whole 9 yards. My husband called me downstairs for dinner. I went downstairs. I'm just running down here. My eyes are all red and puffy. And he just went, "What happened?" And I said, Beadopolis. No, not Beadopolis. Bead Apocalypse. He's like, "What?" And I said it was Bead Apocalypse. And so then I had to explain the whole thing. And my loving husband, who cares for me ever so dearly, busted a gut. He just laughed so hard. And I'm like, "You keep that up and you'll be picking up beads for a week." And he's just like, "Honey, it's your sewing room. It's your problem." And so it's funny now. But like I said, it took me 2 days to pick all those beads up. So everything in this reorganization has just taken longer than it should. My label maker died. I got another one, and then the jack that I had that should have fit didn't fit, and the batteries don't work. And it's just, there's nothing that's been going right overall. I have made some tremendous progress, and so yes, it is coming along. Yes, I'm happy with its progress in general, but in specific, not so much. So I'm going to be working on finishing up the reorganization, and I am working on... Okay, so now you understand why I'm tired. I'm also going through the old family photos. When my mom died, I got all of her photos, plus I had all of my photos. And so I'm going through all of the photos to determine what I want to have scanned. I have a friend who digitizes and restores old photographs. And so which of the old photographs are worth actual restoration? Which ones are not? Which ones do I want to have digitized? That kind of a thing. So I've been going through, I think it was 9 moving boxes worth of photo albums and photos. I've got it down to about 3, which doesn't sound great, but it's a heck of a lot better. And the next step is going to be going through looking for duplicates. Because, so for example, I also have photos, the photo albums of my wedding and things that came from when my mother-in-law passed away. And some of those family photos. So Scott has to go through those, which means it may never happen, but I'm doing what I can. But, it's the pictures that she has, the pictures that my mother had, the pictures that I had. So I had, plus the final photo album, plus the proof set that I have, plus the negatives that I have, just from my wedding. So going through all of this to make sure that I have all the copies of everything that I want is taking a lot of time. So I'm working on that as well. So add in the business, the professional organizing and clients and the book that I'm writing and the presentations that I'm giving. I'm giving a presentation in January to the Institute for Challenging Disorganization, which is one of the 2 professional organizations for professional organizers. And so I've done some training for them before, and I'll be doing one in January, one in April, and one in the 4th quarter. We're not exactly sure on the date yet. They pigeonholed me at conference and said, "Oh, please, would you do these?" And I'm like, okay, I'll teach it. So I'm writing, and then I'm going to be performing those. I'm hopefully going to be attending a whole bunch of conferences again this year in August and September. So this channel might get a little light then. If I get all of the conferences that I want to speak at, it'll pretty much be the last week of October, and then I think that'll be in Detroit, and then I'll be the second week in September in Boston, I think. If that's the case, then I'll be home the third week, then Florida, and then back to Boston. So it's going to be a crazy, insane time. If I'm not going to be in town, I'm hoping to learn how to do the live stream from my phone, but that's going to take some practice. And if I can do that, then even if it's a quick little, hey, I'm in wherever and I'll see you in 2 weeks, at least I'll get a chance to check in with you at that point. If I can't, then you'll know what's going on, and then I'll be able to catch you up when I get back. So it's going to be kind of another busy year, but I'm hoping that more of it is going to be the quilting stuff, because I'm hoping that as I get the book finished, in case you didn't know, I've written a book on hoarding already for law enforcement. I'm writing one now for friends and family of people that have hoarding disorder. So that's the book I'm working on now, plus the speeches, plus everything else. So I'm hoping by the end of next year the book will be done, and I'll have some time to do more sewing. So that's one reason why I love having this channel here, because to some extent, because I know you're going to be watching, I want to have the projects show progress. So you're kind of keeping me accountable too, which is nice. And it means that I must make some time for myself to sew. And so that's a wonderful thing. So thank you so much for being here and helping me with this. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with the way it looks like this year's going to go. And as we go through it, we'll see, how it turns out. But I will be doing my best for you, and we will move forward. I am going to do at least 3 30-day challenges for myself, for my health, this coming year. So, I love Diet Coke. Oh, it is my one major vice. And I am going to give up all carbonated beverages of all kinds for January. So if you see me out and around and I'm looking grumpy drinking tea, that's going to be why. But I want to see... I've given up Diet Coke in the house before. I've had decaffeinated tea because I was giving up the caffeine more than anything else. But if I was out in public, I was drinking the Diet Coke. So if I went to lunch with a friend, I'd have Diet Coke. It wouldn't be a problem. But I am going to try to go carbonation free, because the chemicals that do the carbonation are one of those things that they say are pretty bad for us. And so I'm going to see if I can hack it. I don't know if I'll be able to. I'm going to give it my first shot, and if nothing else, I'm going to have however long I last where I'll be a little bit healthier and taking a little bit better care. But I do want to do a couple of different challenges over the course of the year and see if it makes a difference for me, and how I feel, etc. So you're going to get to hear about that too. Anyway, so we have about 10 minutes left. The only other thing I was going to do was to do some more ironing and things. If you have not been here before, if this is your first time, thank you so much for sticking it out this long. This is the format I generally do. It's going to be the tip, then it's going to be an update on the projects. I'm going to do some chit chat. When I've been on trips, I fill you in on what I saw and what I did, and anything that I saw that was particularly good for quilt inspiration, that kind of stuff. And then there's some general chit chat. I hope that you've enjoyed this. If you did, please like it, please subscribe, and if you hit the bell, it will remind you when I'm going to be on. It is the first and third Wednesday of every month. So you are more than welcome to come, and you're welcome to leave notes in the chat. As you saw earlier today, I read them as they come up, and if I can see them. Sometimes my eyes and the screen don't work very well, but if I notice that they're there, I will share them and talk about whatever it is. You can ask questions there, you can email them. I do want this to be the kind of place where you can just come and sit and relax, and maybe you'll have a sew-along project you'll do with me, and maybe you'll just listen to me yammer, and maybe you just listen to the tip and then move on and watch something else. That's fine too. That's why I always do the tip first, because a lot of times people just want a new idea and they don't want to chit chat, and that's fine. At some point, I'm hoping to do edited videos instead of just the live streams. I would like to know if you like this format that I'm doing. If there's parts of it that you like and parts that you don't, please feel free to share that with me, because I want this to be a place where you want to come. Also, if you have any good recommendations for books on tape, I have been blowing through my books on tape like I've got nothing better to do. I have listened to, I think, 6 books on tape already this month, and it's only the 7th of the month. Now, the 6th one I'm only about a third of the way through, but that's a lot of books on tape. I tend to prefer fantasy science fiction, so if you're into any of that, please feel free to send that on to me. Or if there is a quilting YouTube or blog or something like that that you think I would enjoy, please send it along, because I do a lot of driving, so I listen to things in my car. Plus, when I'm working, I tend to have something on in the background. And when I'm sewing, I always have something on in the background. So it's a lot of hours in a day that I can tear up a book. So please feel free to share that, and I will pass along any suggestions that come along. So I normally do end at 8 o'clock, but since all I'm going to be doing is ironing those 60-degree triangles into pairs, well, they're sewn into pairs. I'm just going to be pressing those into diamonds. It seems like pretty boring content. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off on the live stream early today. I have had a couple people say they prefer the full hour, and then I've had some people say it's fine to end early. So I'm going to end a little early today, and we'll see. If you would prefer the full amount of time, just let me know that as well. Have a wonderful week. I will see you the 3rd Wednesday of this month. I will be here. And the 1st Wednesday of January is going to be like the 3rd or something. So we are still good to go for the rest of the year. Have a wonderful time. Happy holidays if I don't see you before that. And I will wish you all the best. So let's go do some sewing, okay? Bye-bye.